one of the things that Hans taught me when I was with him is he's just like, I love it when you write a piece of music and then you just throw paint at it. You just throw red paint at it and you're just like, you say F off to everyone and I'm doing this. And I love that. I love just like creating gear shifts and just all
Yeah.
these things, just to switch up styles and make more of an impact and be bold and unique and individualistic and
Yeah.
not try and adhere to typical things.
Andrew, thank you so much for sharing your time with us on the movie podcast today. How's your day going so far?
Yeah, no, it's going great. Yeah, a lot of build up for this weekend, so I'm excited.
I love it. We've had the chance to watch Gran Turismo. We absolutely loved the movie. We had such a great time with it. And since the score has now come out, we've been just bumping that nonstop, especially when we're driving.
Especially when we're driving.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even right now, like we were on our way back from a screening and I was like, oh yeah, well, let's just jam out to the soundtrack.
I mean that was the whole point of it, to be honest. Like when Neil approached Lauren and I and we were talking concepts and everything, he's like, I want a soundtrack that people can actually listen to, something that, because there was a lot of like hip hop and pop songs that were in the temp and stuff, and you're like, let's try and keep it modern and let's keep it, something that people can tap their foot to but not feel like they're in Ibiza in like some rave. Like let's keep it like nice and modern. And so, it was fun to try and incorporate some, some more poppy, hip hoppy type of things, and not just your traditional score.
And I'm curious for yourself, did you ever play like Gran Turismo? Was that ever your jam? Like playing games? Do you unwind after a session?
Yeah. Are you a gamer after the music?
I'm not actually an avid gamer. I to be honest, I just don't have the time. I don't have the luxury. Like it's just I started in this industry 16 years ago, but with the amount of hours I've worked, it's probably been around 48 years or something. So it's like so I don't have that luxury of unwinding, but like I've always admired it. My brother's an avid gamer, and when I bought my first PlayStation, or my parents bought me my first PlayStation as a kid, I remember playing Gran Turismo back then, and I just remember like being taken away with it. And then whenever we went to arcades and stuff, like I do remember there being like an arcade down in my hometown, and they had like a couple like Gran Turismo sim racers and stuff. And so I have experienced it. And actually when I did start this, I did buy a PS4 and I bought it, or sorry, PS5, and then and played it a bit just to see what it was like and get into it.
That's very cool. I mean, we look at this story and it's, it's about gaming, it's about racing. There's this element of a true story behind it. For you, what was it about Jan's story that you're like, yeah, this is it. This is the next movie I want to do?
Yeah, to be honest, when I watched it the first time, I didn't believe it was a true story. And, because there was no disclaimer at the front, like, we hadn't really spoken about it to Neil, and we were just, screening it for the first time. And well, afterwards, we were talking to producers and everything, told us the real story. I'm like, no, 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 no. Because yeah, spoiler alert, but that crash, that is like, I've never felt so much for a character, that pain and anxiety that's feeling in the bed. And I was like, we really held that as like a cornerstone of the film, like, and we drew back from it to, play this fear of anxiety, this fear of failure, that, he's just a gamer. He can't execute this in real life. And we really built to that point, because that was such a climactic point of the story. And then how everything changed back then, and then in the final race when he nearly causes a crash, it really was a tentpole, as like a story arc that we wanted to play throughout the film.
Yeah, and I think throughout the movie, again, it's one of those things that I remember when the story was happening, and it was just like, it just seems like feels like too much like a movie, right? Like it feels like almost like this doesn't feel like this would ever happen, but it's true. And I think there's such an incredible emotion to the movie, but you also have such an amazing score that accompanies it. And like you said, it was like such a modern score. So like you're saying, like there's just so many tracks to this that we're just bumping and having
Yeah.
a good time too. And it's great because like you want to also keep that feeling of excitement and adrenaline throughout. And I think you and Lauren both nailed that. And I'm curious for yourself, what was it like collaborating with Lauren on this project? When did you guys first meet? Because I know you've probably been in the same circle for a while, but like what was like collaborating with each other and all of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a crazy story with Lauren. I started in this industry back in '08, and I was Lauren's technical assistant. And this was back when he was writing for Hans Zimmer. He had a much smaller operation, wasn't doing Mission Impossibles and stuff. And he's expanded into this, giant in the industry. And so I started off with him. I worked with him for about 3 years, and then I started writing for Hans, and we've always kept in contact. I did a Chinese film with Lauren last year. He wanted to bring me on because I worked on Chappie, which was Neil's film with Hans and Steve Mazzaro, and everyone on the team. And so, he thought it'd be a good point for me to revive that collaboration. It was incredible. He really gave me a lot of liberties. We really kind of worked on making the score original and unique, and he was definitely pushing me to not just fit a norm and try new and inventive things, because my background, I'm a very big sound designer. I love synths. I love making cool new sounds. I was trying to push the boundaries on that, but then also bring like a poppy feel to it. I come from an EDM background. About 16, 17 years ago when I moved to Hollywood, I was making beats for DJs, crossover beats and everything like that. So, I've always had an ear to modern pop music and hip hop. I'm a big fan of hip hop. So it was really incredible, just collaborating with him, coming up on ideas. Neil had this great idea about using vocals, and kind of bringing in this like crowd feeling into things, and like having just like chanting in the background and feel like all of those gamers are behind him, and it's not just him. But then we also did a lot of solo voices so that we could bring out those emotional moments and stuff. So it was an incredible collaboration. And then just everyone over at 14th Street Music, all of the writers. It was a big production, and then all of the video game film composers that came in and did like a lot of sonic design. It was it was a real team effort.
I love that. And it's funny because like you mentioned like just a blend of just like your background with being in sound design and synths, and like literally behind you, like you have like the one side guitars, one side the synth world. And I think that's something that we've loved so much, that we've seen like through Hans Zimmer's work, through Lauren Balfe's work, and through your work, where you guys have such an incredible blend of those two worlds, where you're not afraid to have a traditional orchestra, but also get weird with it, put it through different patches of different pedals and vibes, and get some cool sounding stuff out of it all, right?
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, I really do credit that to Hans and Lauren. Hans's approach to films was always he needed to create a sound palette. He had to get all these instruments, sample all these instruments, try new and different things. And like you look at scores like Sherlock Holmes, like it's some of the craziest instruments out there, and they're just doing like all these weird things, musicians playing instruments weirdly. And so I mean, we did have like a couple month process. Also with Rufio Sandilands, who's over on Lauren's team. We try to form new synth sounds, new synth vox sounds, try to incorporate certain like race sounds into like risers and stuff, but not trying to be obvious with it. But then also trying to take instruments and trying to like turn them into the gears of the car. So I had this ostinato it's on the last track of the soundtrack, the Drive Within, and it kind of comes throughout the film, but it's two different ostinatos that are playing at two different tempos. So they one is just a little bit faster, and so it starts to clash with itself, but it kind of feels like RPMs of an engine, like you're just like when you're falling back and you're going forward and stuff like that. So yeah, I was really just trying to create a world for Gran Turismo that would be unique for the screen.
I love that you mentioned all these different methods that you took, and you talk about this. There's a moment, I think, in the score, I think it's the track "This Is Not a Game," and it's when that moment Daniel and I were listening to it in the car, and we did that really like dirty face, like, oh, what is this we're hearing? Like this is going hard. And like it was just like, if I wasn't on the highway, I would have pulled over just so I could hear the bass in my car popping. And I gotta wonder, what elements of the car, or how much of it did you really incorporate into the score? Because I know you mentioned RPMs and everything, but is there any sounds of the car or anything that we should be like, okay, this is really a big element of a car, or a race car at least?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't go so extensively into like closing doors or key latches or anything like that. One thing about Hans that he really instilled in me is synthesizers, like those things right there. They can create real sounds. They can simulate and emulate sounds, and it makes it original because it's never been created before. And so in the film world, we're constantly battling with sound effects, and the sound for this movie is just, it's impeccable. It's really incredible how much they made us feel like we were in the car. And so we didn't really necessarily want to step on that. So we kind of made like just a bunch of presets, kicks, snares, things that could emulate as parts of the car, and then also musical motifs that could glide around with that. And then as far as like actual real sound effects that we use, there's a lot of like drive-bys. There are like kind of brakes and crashes and stuff that we incorporated into risers and hits, just to give it that little extra amp, because whenever you're listening to just a classic techno track and there's like a big rise in it, it sounds like it's a car or a plane lifting off. So yeah, it was interesting to incorporate some of those drive-bys, stretch them out, and then put a bunch of effects on them to see what we could create in these risers to make these big beats more impactful and everything.
Absolutely. And you've got the score that's going to be played in like IMAX theaters across the world. So when you're hearing that sound, I gotta know, was there ever a discussion at some point to just start recording the instruments in the car while going like 200 miles an hour around a lap or something?
No, but I love that. And
you can have that next time.
You can have that for the next one.
Yes. I'm the royalties, residuals will be coming straight here. That's a brilliant idea. We're gonna put a whole band in a car, crash them. Everything.
Yeah, great. Yeah. We'll get the greatest sounds that way, I think.
Great samples for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Very costly samples.
Andrew, I'm curious for yourself. You mentioned hip hop. You mentioned a lot of different genres that were your influence for you growing up. Well, who were those artists that you were listening to? I'm curious.
As far as hip hop goes, I love Kanye. I love Yeezus. I love My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. I did love Donda. It's just I really love his musical sensibility and how he's able to create new sound palettes. And Yeezus, what he was able to do with that, it was so simplistic, and I know it goes hard, but it's like it's really impactful, and it's something that is actually, I feel like it's influenced a lot of my film writing. And as like far as EDM go, like Aphex Twin is my heart and soul. Window Liquor, I still believe, is one of the greatest electronic tracks of all time. I also love Autechre, Square Pusher. The list goes on and on. I'm just trying to list because whenever I start a film, I make a playlist, and these aren't like melody driven things; they're more vibe based, and it's just something I listen to, like not in the studio, but like when I'm walking or when I'm out in the car or anything like that. I just kind of put it on just to get like into the vibe. And these were a lot of artists that I had in there. And then like Kendrick Lamar is another big one. The way his kick drums, his rhythms, it's incredible how much he can fall into the beat and stuff like that. And yeah. So I think there were, because we were trying to form new hi-hat rhythms, not just doing the typical triplet Drake stuff, trying to like switch it up and everything. So yeah, I think as far as this film goes, those were some of my heavy plays.
You definitely hear the Yeezus inspiration in there because it's just so heavy, and the movie brings that especially.
Yeah, one of the things that Hans taught me when I was with him is he's just like, I love it when you write a piece of music and then you just throw paint at it. You just throw red paint at it and you're just like, you say F off to everyone and I'm doing this. And I love that. I love just like creating gear shifts and just all these things, just to switch up styles and make more of an impact and be bold and unique and individualistic and not try and adhere to typical things.
I love that. And obviously you've worked with Hans multiple times throughout your career. You were working with him also like on the Amazing Spider-Man 2 soundtrack, which is another soundtrack that I think just incorporates so much. Like to hear a score incorporate dubstep, as like especially in that time, like it's so cool to have a score that could touch so much, like of so many different genres. Right.
I mean, well, that was such a band effort, with Pharrell Williams and Mike Eisinger of Incubus and Junkie XL and Steve Mazzaro, myself, Zarina Russell, Hans. It was just you had a bit of everything, and then you had Steve Lipson coming in to mix it, to bring just all of these incredible, unique producing tactics that he does. And that was a crazy project. There was a lot of like jam sessions and songs trying to be written but I mean, I think that's what I love about Hans and that whole atmosphere. It's bringing a team in, collaborating, trying to figure out new ideas, because you just don't know what people are going to bring to the table, and someone can do something completely unique from a different style of music that can actually blend well with a different one.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Now, is there something that you want audiences to listen out for in the Gran Turismo soundtrack? Like, is there like an Easter egg you've gotten there, or just something you're like, oh, I really hope people pick this element of it up?
Yeah, I mean, I think the last track, The Drive Within, is something that's really close with me. It's a long track, it's about 8 minutes, but yeah, that tune at the end, that was something that it only appears in the end credits. We couldn't find a place for it in the film. We were trying. It was just a little too sad, a little too hopeful, or not hopeful, but yeah, that's a tune that's really close to me. This Is Not a Game, I mean, that's another one. And then like the Academy Final Lap, or just I think it's the Academy Race. I'm sorry, when we work on films, we name everything different, and so when it goes on the soundtrack, we never remember the names or anything.
All good.
But yeah, at the end of the Academy Race, there's like a really cool vocal thing that I did with Julie Elvin, a brilliant vocalist from Germany, and it's that one I was like, okay, this is cool.
We definitely heard that one, like when we were driving today, especially too. We were like, oh, this is like a vocal part coming in. It's very cool.
It's wicked.
Yeah. Trying to switch it up and create anxiety in new ways,
Andrew, we don't want to take up too much of your time. We're just so grateful for you hanging out with us. We love your studio. Like, we hopefully we'll get to meet you one day. We could talk more music. We could talk about music all day
hours.
With you. But we're so excited to watch this movie again. We have tickets to go see it this weekend, so we're excited to see your name. We're going to cheer. We're going to start a round of applause when we see it. But we're just again, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on the film, and we really hope we get to talk to you again.
No, thanks so much, you guys. Have a good day.